Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Daniel Hegerich, health coach. You can find out more about Dan and his wonderful work at danhegerich.com. Welcome, Dan Hegerich.
Hi, Catherine. It has been quite a while since we've connected, so it's a delight to do this in this venue.
Yes. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is something that's really important for everybody, which we're going to be talking about what you can do to prevent cancer. And Dan is someone who really knows a lot about this subject because he had cancer not one, but 6 times. And years ago, he worked with me as a client, which was my pleasure, and I learned a lot by working with him. So Dan, you have been tumor-free for 19 years. What are the 3 perspectives others might consider to prevent experiencing cancer in their lifetime?
Well, I like what you brought up is how to empower people to take their health back and to navigate through the process of what that would entail. And some of the perspectives I like to offer first is that prevention is a tough word because, you know, we could do all the things in the world and still be blindsided by something. So here's an example. People can do all the austerities and still have a heart attack. So I like to use the word prevention and say, what can I do to reduce my risk, number one, of coming in contact with chronic degenerative disease as part of my experience here in human form. And then the next thing you want to actually think about is what can I do to bring more aliveness into my life? So it's not only what can I not do, but what can I do to bring aliveness? So that's a perspective I want everyone to really harbor, reflect on, and take note on that, because it's very important, because there's 2 really principles of life is that anything is possible. You and I know that. You've seen miracles all the time, but that doesn't mean there's any guarantee. So, you know, this is a humbling way. It's what am I doing today to build more aliveness, and what am I doing today to avoid the risks or reduce my risks? So that's one perspective. The next one that I actually had as my own personal experience was that people have been by default assuming cancer is a disease, right? Would you agree? That's a default setting. Cancer is a disease, it's abnormal, it's uncomfortable, it's deadly, it's tragic. But on the other side of the coin, it's actually an awakening. It's an opportunity. It's something else. And I had the ability or the blessing to look at cancer as not particularly a disease, but an expression of the disease. And so that makes us look at it totally different. If you say cancer is a disease and it's happening to me, then I'm a victim of it. I had nothing to do with it. If I say cancer is not a disease and it's an expression of the disease, this can actually be the empowering process to say, hey, I contributed to this in some way. Or how did I contribute to this in some way? And that was the route I took. And if we look at it from science, cancer is a disease, they actually narrow their view in a microscope and look at it under a microscope. If you look at it from the other perspective, that cancer is not a disease, but an expression of the disease, I looked at it from a telescope and the holistic picture of all of life. And so people can actually start to consider that. And I know there'll be a question. So if cancer is not a disease and it's an expression of the disease, what's the disease, right? They'll ask that. And maybe we can get to that during this particular session or at a future reference. So those are 2 very powerful ones, that cancer is not a disease, and that what can you do to reduce your risk and what can you actually do to build your livelihood. And then another perspective is that self-love is the only absolute love that is incredibly necessary for the process of regaining your life back, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're at, no matter if it's cancer, heart disease, overweight, relationship issues, money issues. Self-love is at the core of all of it. And we can maybe put that as live an inspired life. You know, there's information everywhere and it's an overload, but we want to get back to our inspiration for living, for life itself. So that's another perspective that I help.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times, Dan, when I'm doing medical intuitive readings, I look at a person's will to live. Now, your will to live is basically your determination and your desire to keep going. And it is an expression of self-love, of loving yourself, of loving who you are in this lifetime, of being grateful for this experience to be alive. And, you know, a sort of a bring it on attitude, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, bring it on, because it's so worthwhile.
Yeah, you need a true north. Remember when I said anything is possible? So am I living in that will, that anything is possible? That's the will. Anything is possible. And I think that was my language, was like, no, anything's possible. And that's the way I lived, and that's the way I navigated. Even if there was so many obstacles, it was that mantra that, no, anything's possible, to keep going. And I think there was a part of me that was also saying to myself that I'm inspired to do what I need to do in order to actually benefit other people too, through my process. And I think everybody has that as part of their will. It's not just for yourself. There's always something else outside of that, and saying, I'm going to go through this suffering consciously so that I can gain some wisdom, so that we can make a difference in the evolution of mankind towards all the things that we yearn for virtues, you know, is peace and happiness and abundance and joy and creativity. The list goes on. And I think that we all have that yearning, yet we lose sight of anything is possible because we need a guarantee. If you need a guarantee, you're in the wrong planet, you know? But to live that anything is possible and let go of the expectation of an outcome that's in your egoic sense of self, then you can play. You're free to play.
Now, if emotional healing is required to prevent cancer, Dan Hegerich, what 3 things do you think people can do to heal their emotions?
Yeah, emotions are really amazing because they can fuel us to have a will, like it can carry out our will, and it can also damn us, right? It can also block us up and shackle us in these chains of past emotions. I think one thing that people want to take a look at is don't be afraid to be able to experience and feel your feelings. And the second thing is it's always helpful to be witnessed while you're feeling them, with non-judgment and with kindness and care, because I think a lot of us have wounds because when we were emotional, when we were younger, we weren't witnessed properly. We were shamed, we were blamed, we were, something was wrong with us for having these emotions. And those get stored up. And yeah, we make adaptations and compensations in our personality and psyche, but they carry out unconsciously as a default program. And so we're always in these patterns until we actually stop and say it's okay to be with the feeling. And the second part of that equation is no one is responsible for creating those emotions in you. They're yours. So when you can take responsibility for those emotions, you have a huge lift in your emotional literacy, your emotional intelligence, just by taking responsibility for them and not blaming someone else for creating them. So those are really 2 of the most important things. And then on top of that, for me personally, it came back to mother and father, which was the first process, was to learn to love and accept and forgive and to honor my mom and dad. And then I can start to really do the work of recap, taking back my own masculine and feminine energy. Otherwise, it's trapped in those past emotions with the relationship with mom and dad.
Now, in my work as a medical intuitive healer, one of the things that I do is I pinpoint the precise emotions that are causing people to be sick. And then I work with you to clear and process these emotions, because very few people understand your emotional body is the largest part of you. Even if you don't think of yourself as an emotional person, and emotions can shut down the processing of any organ or any physiological process in the body. So, you know, you in my professional opinion, you really can't heal until you process out and release the emotions that have made you sick. And I think it's really important, whether we have cancer or any other dis-ease, that you identify the emotions that have caused you to be unwell.
Yeah, oftentimes there's awareness. We need awareness. And if someone's been in the fear state or pain state for a very long time, often we have to get them out of that pain so awareness can actually come into their life. So how we go about doing that is our own particular process. You know, I decided that I went through the body first. I just cleaned up the body, like detoxification, nourishment, movement, and just keep repeating that. And my awareness started to come online, and I actually could free up energy to actually look at things. I mean, often people are so vitally low or low in vitality, they don't even have the energy to actually look at an emotion because of the energy that's behind them. It can actually cause them to actually have a problem if they look at it with low energy. So my process was, let me get the body back and healthy, and then I can start to really enter into that growing up phase of taking ownership and looking at my emotional well-being, and then having the courage to take a look at what my beliefs are, which are pretty tied together. You know, beliefs and emotions kind of go together in some regards.
Now, I agree with you, Dan, because when I'm doing healing work with my clients, I don't start doing any emotional, mental, spiritual process work until I know they're eating right and they're for their body, because that's different for each person, as you know, and also taking the right natural healing remedies. So when you're working on the physical and you've got the physical going in the right direction, so you're rebuilding your chi, you're rebuilding your energy, then you have the vitality to start dealing with and clearing some of these deeper patterns. Now let's talk about diet and the role of preventing cancer.
Yeah.
What do you think are the 3 dietary principles to prevent cancer?
So back to perspective, I think people need to really take a look at the word diet, because when we talk about diet, people almost automatically contract, like just the word itself. So I've tried diets, and my mother did diet. They just get contracted around it often. So the word diet to me, and diet means that anything that you put into your eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and on your skin. It's a cumulative effect of all those things, because what you're watching feeds your brain. It's food for the thought. It's part of the process. If you look at beauty every day, that's going to change everything. If you listen to beautiful music, that's going to change everything. You start smelling aromas that are pleasant. See, so people just think diet's food and beverage usually. But it's everything that goes into your eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and on your skin, and that has been doing that for a cumulative effect over the years. You could even consider your parents' diet, because that's the environment you grew up in. So that's an expanded view. I know that's more less than practical, but from a cancer point of view, prevention means the cellular membrane and getting the fats right, because we need to oxygenate the cell. And you need to get the fats right inside the cell on the internal organs of the cell, the organelles. Those cell membranes communicate throughout the whole body via that cell membrane. So the energetic connection between the cells. So that cell membrane needs to be looked at, and the fats that are in that cell membrane, because it's made up of 50% fats or more, and cholesterol. So, and I think one of the things that has always come to mind is these fandangled, unnatural fats and oils that people cook with. Those things causing lots of problems for people in the cancer realm. And then you add sugar to the diet, and that even makes more problems compounded. So you got those two complex things, as the fats and the sugars, and then turning your dietary process around, especially preventing it, is to really make sure you can burn fat as a good fuel source, because burning sugar creates an anaerobic state. It's not done with oxygen, and cancer doesn't survive or doesn't thrive in an oxygen-rich cellular environment. So that's one of the principles. And then now the vastness of diet is what you were just pointing out. Not only individual, but it's cultural, it's social. And there's going to be a lot of discomfort if a person starts to say, hey, I'm not going to drink alcohol, because we know women that drink excessive alcohol, even 2 glasses a week, can actually increase their risk for breast cancer. I don't know why. It's just what the way of the world right now. And so we have to say, if you're not going to drink alcohol, but you're around social structures that drink alcohol, you're going to feel isolated. And now you're going to target your emotions. This is now we're coming back to your sweet spot about the emotional healing, because some people say, I'm not going to give up drinking, right? If that's necessary, they just don't want to do it. But I also point out that dietary processes is be sober in the beginning. Get sober so you can bring more awareness into your life to what foods will work for you, and how do you know that they're working. So that's one thing. You know, we can go on about clean sources of water. Don't be putting yourself in a chlorinated shower because you're breathing that in. Don't be putting so much chemicals all over your skin from personal care items, because 60 to 80% of what you put on your skin goes into your body. So I ask clients, I go, bring your personal care items in, and I take a tablespoon out. I said, here, try, would you eat this? I'm like, no. I'm like, but you are. You are consuming it. That's how a nicotine patch works. It goes into your system through the skin. So they get a real live awakening of, oh, I'm eating those things, I'm consuming them. I'm like, yeah, it's clogging your lymphatic system up, and then it gets into your blood. So,
yeah. One of my guests in the past on the Natural Healing Show has been Sally Larson, who has survived cancer, and she created an organic skincare company, Sally B Skin Yummies. And a lot of her products are verified by EWG as being organic and safe. But again, people don't realize the effect of what you're putting on your body. Now let's talk about exercise. Can exercise help to prevent cancer? And
absolutely.
And if so, what are the 3 exercises that you recommend for people to do to prevent cancer?
Well, let me step back, because I think people, when they go, again, there are some groups of people that when they think exercise, they think, oh, I can't exercise, exercise is miserable, bicep curls, aerobic class. So let's step back. Exercise, there's 2 main exercises that people can do. Exercise, energy going out. So I'm going to take my energy and I'm going to put it into some activity, and my energy is going to be depleted in that activity. That's energy going out, and that's the classic form of exercise that people know. I'm going to go jogging, running, biking, swimming, you name it, it's energy going out. And if you're in a depleted state, that might not be the best one for you to consider initially. Then there's energy going in type exercises. Energy going in type exercises creates movement, stimulation, circulation, stimulates the immune system, but it doesn't cost you any energy, it gives you energy. So if people can really understand that and then just go out and Google that, you'll find plenty of energy going in type things. And the Ayurvedas in yoga, and the Qigong masters know this. So, let's bring a little bit of that into your life so that you can have energy going in. I mean, just meditation, sitting in stillness and silence is the ultimate exercise, because you'll see how much movement is really happening in your monkey mind, how much thoughts are just flying around, and how much they're playing out in you. So, but for people, like Osho said, our minds in the West are too busy, so we have to usually do some sort of dance or some sort of movement to still ourselves. I love self-expression type movement, which would be dance, which would be even art of any kind is really helpful as far as a movement for energy going in. Journaling is an energy going in exercise. Even though you're dumping your thoughts, energy is being freed up, and it doesn't cost you much. With that said, I think Hippocrates said the best exercise is walk. But he didn't mean walk with a goal in mind. He meant walk with awareness, walk with bare feet on the ground, walk with all your senses. Don't have your phone with you or earbuds in your ears. Let all of nature's sounds and smells and feelings nurture you. And then go for long walks, not a 20-minute walk around the block. I mean, if that's all you can do, that's fantastic. But he's talking like hours. Like, go for it. Like, if you're going to spend 3 hours to watch a long movie, why can't you spend 3 hours and go into nature and walk, knowing you're healing yourself and you're giving yourself the human pleasure of being alive?
Now,
And then I learned with the last one was the primal movement patterns. So, learning about how the human body would move as it would normally in nature is a very helpful thing, like squatting, pushing, pulling, twisting, bending, lunging, etc. Those get your primal body active and stimulate your will because you're feeling stronger in that body. So those are some ideas that people can toss around and explore.
If you ask me what 3 exercise types of exercise I would recommend to prevent cancer, there would be Tai Chi and Qigong being one, because those forms of exercise balance your acupuncture system and clear your energy field. And I've taught Qigong for over 20 years. Yoga, but not hot yoga, not power yoga, not any yoga that's going to stress your body and stress you. More of an alignment-based practice or restorative yoga. And finally, walking in nature, like you mentioned. And there's lots of research about how walking in nature lowers your stress hormones.
Oh, yeah.
We just had Yara Goetti on the radio show, and she's an expert on woodlands. And there's studies that if you're just in a park, if you live in a city and you're in a park for 20 minutes, it has profound effects on your body, even if you're not exercising.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I continue to teach yoga. This is my 24th year teaching yoga. And yoga is so profound for us because it balances the chakra system. And when you balance your energy centers, you're balancing the acupuncture meridians and the organs and the muscles, because there's a flow of energy in the body. And the energy comes into these energy centers, our chakras, and goes from the chakras to your meridians, to your organs, and then to your muscles. And, I was doing a medical intuitive reading the other day with a lady who asked me to read the energy in her heart. And the first thing I said is, hey, you're not getting enough exercise for your heart. So it's like, you want me to tell you about your heart, and it's like you're not taking care of your heart at the most fundamental level. And when we're not moving, you're not moving the lymph system. And the lymph system is part of the systems that you have to keep healthy to prevent cancer. The only way to move the lymph is by exercise, drinking water, deep breathing, or massage. So you've got to move. Now, Dan Hegerich, let's talk about stress and inflammation. What are some strategies that you find helpful for people to reduce stress and inflammation thus reducing their risk of cancer and other chronic degenerative diseases.
So I think when we talk about stress and inflammation, they're kind of together. When you're stressed out, you're inflamed. When you're inflamed, you're going to be stressed out. So anything you can do to prevent inflammation will reduce your stress. Anything you do to reduce your stress will start to reduce inflammation. I personally like to do hot and cold water showers or cold water showers for inflammation, and stressing the body in a controlled environment. It's been proven so much that when you can sit in that state for about 3 minutes, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and everything in the body becomes alive, because initially it contracts every single cell and squeezes it. And then when you get out of the shower, all of a sudden they expand and blood flow is just so much greater. It's for personality type A's, most likely. Otherwise, type B's have to put their feet in cold water. But some people enjoy it, some people don't. But you can just start with just a simple hot and cold water shower for about 5 or 6 times between the two. And this has been so well known with people that live in the deep northern hemispheres about the ability to create adaptation and reduce your stress. You do that once or twice a day or once or twice a week, that doesn't matter to me. But the more, I think you were pointing out about yoga and qigong, it's cumulative. People want immediate gratification in our culture, and the yoga and the tai chi is something you do frequently, like the cold water to reduce stress. It's something you have to do frequently to really get the benefit, and be patient and have a knowing that this is going to help you. Stress reduction is the ability to identify what is your stressor. Some people don't even have it in their awareness what's stressing them out. You know, so they have to be able to sit down and actually have a dialogue with someone to help them uncover what is my greatest stressor. And for me, it's health, wealth, or loving relationships. So where is it showing up? And then address it at that level. So, oh, I'm having problems with money, career, this and that. Great. Go in there. Find what's the stressor and try to do your best to put energy into that to reduce that stress in that area. Might be your health. Good. Go into health. And health, wealth, and loving relationships is just body, mind, and spirit, right? So if you're having a hard, loving relationship with your husband, your partner, your lover, whatever, then you have to go there. You have to take a look at that. Inflammation is well known. So we talked about what you eat is medicine. It really can be effective. Your food is going to be either inflammatory or not, you know, at the end of the day. So pay attention to the foods that you're eating. Typically, processed foods are highly inflammatory, right? So, and if you can go into things that are more fresh, whole foods, then you're going to actually be way better off in terms of that. But we do know that artificial light is inflammatory. Your phone, the blue light emitted from the phone is highly inflammatory. So that's why getting out in bare feet and walking in nature to ground that energy is anti-inflammatory.
You know, I have a very simple sentence that I have put together with my clients to illustrate and explain this complex principle in a simple way. Because big picture, my understanding, the 3 big risk factors for cancer are stress, inflammation, and impaired detoxification, which is something that we haven't discussed yet. But let's talk about inflammation. So 70% of inflammation begins in your gut. So you get to control your inflammation your inflammation level by what you eat. So there are foods that cause inflammation, and there are foods that are anti-inflammatory. So I put together a simple sentence, which is, nobody in their right mind eats cats. Nobody in their right mind eats cats. Well, what are cats? Caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, and then what I refer to as the friends of cats, fried foods and gluten.
Oh, that's awesome.
and just like if you own a cat, you know, if you think you're in charge of cats, you're wrong. And so the more that you can reduce or eliminate the cats, the caffeine, alcohol, the tobacco, the sugar, the fried foods, and the gluten, the more you can turn down those in your diet, the more you're going to be naturally reducing your inflammation. And then foods that are anti-inflammatory, basic, water, clean water, distilled water pulls toxins out of the joints because it's very pure and has very pure few particles in it. Fruits and vegetables, we know all about fruits and vegetables. And that's why I really like my clients to do juices or smoothies every day, because sometimes it's hard to get those 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables.
Right.
But if you're making a juice or a smoothie every day and getting the green juices in your body, you're going to, again, be turning down the inflammation and really feeding your cells with high phytonutrient foods. And your comment about stress is very important, because one of the things that we know is the 3 biggest causes of stress are money, health, and relationships. Mm-hmm. So Dan Hegerich, I really like your idea of, having people go into, where, what's going on, money, health, and relationships. But at the same time, also, I think so many people, their nervous system is just cranked on high gear all the time in our society. And this pattern of being chronically stuck in the sympathetic nervous system, I think can even be caused by childhood abuse, or the pattern may have started in childhood. So a lot of people are not used to being calm. To them, calm is boring.
Not only boring, it's threatening, because now you lose your identity. Because if you are, I remember growing up, and if I had, let's say I was drinking alcohol and people liked that personality, and I had a need to be accepted, and I'm being accepted because they like that personality. Now, guess what? If I don't have alcohol, I don't like myself and I'm not accepted, I need the alcohol. So now if I have to do away with it, I have a loss of identity. Same thing with stress, just stress in general. If I don't know how to live without the chaos, then that means I'm losing a sense of my identity. And that is, I think, a lot of what your work is to help people identify with the part of them that has willpower, that is willpower, that is hope. And that's a fundamental part of what our work is to make sure that people say, I'm worth life, I'm worth living, I'm worth taking back my life. And yeah, with cancer, I'm going down to Nashville the end of the month for a conference and training on ketosis and nutritional intermittent fasting and detoxification, all strategies around cancer experts in the US. People from the University of Florida, from various places are coming up with all the science about these, about this information for cancer patients and for people that want to prevent it, to help understand it better, so clearer. And yeah, we can go into great details and depth about all the things people can do, but that could be overwhelming for people that are actually suffering right now, because when you're suffering, you don't have a lot of energy. You're going to be sympathetically driven. So
yes, no, going back to what I said, the 3 big risk factors for cancer are stress, inflammation, impaired detoxification. So let's talk now about impaired detoxification. My understanding is that 40% of the population, that means 4 out of 10 people, their body does not detoxify properly. And so when you look at that genetic predisposition, then a lot of us need to support our systems of detoxification. And simply going on a water fast does not work, because detoxification is a highly nutritionally intensive process in the body. What do you find is helpful for people when you're talking about detoxification? Yeah. What are some of the strategies that you recommend?
So we're talking basic physiological, physical detoxification, because we could touch on emotional detox and spiritual detoxes, but let's just be practical. For me, sweating is one of the biggest, because the lymphatic system is so implicated in detoxification, and it's not talked about enough, and it's not, it's not a focal point in a lot of healthcare professionals, but the lymphatic system is so profound as far as its detoxification capacity, and sweating is very, very important in that. So that means an hour of sweating, and you can do it active sweating and most passive sweating. Active sweating is when you exercise and move and create friction and sweat. But then there's also the passive one, which is hot baths and sauna therapy of any kind. Those are two magnificent ways to start the detoxification, and it makes you feel great. I mean, it's I think that's one of the best. And I like your cats and friends, because that'll start detoxification immediately when you start getting rid of foods that are inflammatory to your gut. So those are big. And then I really do think the liver and gallbladder need a lot of love and appreciation and attention when it comes to detoxification. And there's many processes that can be done.
Yes. And for saunas, I am a big fan of far infrared saunas. And, you know, it may be expensive for you to purchase a far infrared sauna, but if you're at risk for cancer, it's going to be a lot cheaper to buy a sauna and use it every day than to go through the pain and suffering of cancer treatment. And now, what else can you suggest for people to prevent cancer? You know, if you could sort of come up with the top principles that you work with as somebody.
I think they just have to, for me personally, is going into their own self and find the path that brings them to their honest exploration. In other words, they need to be participants in the process. And if they're not willing to explore and even push back, I like clients that push back on what I'm doing if they don't know why. I love that, because they're invested in learning and they are trying to find their way to their principles and core values for life and for living. So to me, that's one. And then, I mean, obviously we have the internet. Get a mentor. I mean, get someone. I mean, hire someone. Just acquire a mentor and a community of support. I mean, those two, I think, are fundamental. If you don't have a mentor, you're going to be lost and you're going to go through a lot of trial and tribulations. If you don't have a community, you're really going to be, it's going to be hard. And so get out and do a group session of yoga or Tai Chi, do a group meditation, you know, be in that field of health and healing. Put yourself in that field. Put yourself in that field of beauty. Put yourself in nature. And that's going to go a long way.
Now, Dan, some of our audience right now may have cancer as we speak. What would you recommend for someone who has already been diagnosed with cancer and they're going through the process of working on healing themselves?
It's a great question, right? I get that quite a bit with people calling me. My husband has cancer, my wife has cancer, what do I do? And interestingly enough, when a wife or a husband calls on behalf of someone else, it's not about the wife, it's about their relationship. So I have to work with them first. Because it's until that person gives permission to go find information, it's not for the person. So if a person is actually diagnosed with cancer right now, the first thing they have to do is really take a look at what anxiety and fear is coming up. You have to take a look at that, because that's conditioned in. As I mentioned, cancer is a disease, and so we're going to go into all that fear that's been placed into us. But if we can go back and say, wait, cancer might not be the disease, it's an expression of the disease. And what was my part in this? How can I start to reflect and take ownership of this in some way? This is not a belittling thing. This is not to say it's not empathetic or compassionate that you're suffering, but you have to want to get to a place of centeredness if you can. And then reach out, look for information. Find, there's all kinds of people in the industry that you can talk to and weigh your options, you know, just weigh out the options. I can't dictate that for people. People have to be in charge of what their process is. And then start cleaning up your diet. I mean, the first thing I always tell people is that, you know, go buy a juicer, clean up your diet. You know, it's not that hard. And then start to eat grass-fed meats and fish in small amounts, and then get some real fat in your diet that is healthy diet. I mean, even in a week, I'm getting fresh pressed macadamia nut oil from Hawaii come in, right? It's phenomenal food. It's the oil in that. And then yeah, just put yourself into play with people that believe in you, that can support you, that can love and nourish you, but also not to sympathize with you, to say poor me. I didn't need that for my journey. I didn't need poor you or this is sad or tragic, because then that kind of leaves a ripple of tragedy. Even if that person should pass away from cancer, it leaves a tragedy behind. I didn't want to leave that behind. I wanted to leave something that was more like, wow, this guy was going for it, you know, and he had the willpower to transcend it, you know, to rise above it rather than to be consumed by it. And that will leave a rippling effect of to other people that anything is possible. If you want to leave a legacy, that's a great legacy, right? Anything's possible.
Important message. And let's go back to diet, because I've had clients with cancer. They're juicing, they're buying their organic vegetables, and then they are microwaving them. And I'm like, oh my God. So can you explain why we have to give up the microwave? How crucial is that for preventing and eliminating cancer?
Yeah, it goes into the same, one of the theories I have is food should be eaten according to nature's laws. And because it contains information from nature. We're eating information. And that information is coding your genetic potential. So whatever you're eating is information, and it's actually programming your genetic material to either be favorable or unfavorable. So you are ultimately the programmer of your reality with regards to that. So when you put food in a microwave, you change the information.
You're reversing the molecular spin. And when somebody has cancer, the molecules, the cells in your body are spinning backwards, and the toxins are driving deeper into the cells. So when you eat microwave food, the molecular spin has been reversed. And even eating microwave vegetables will raise your cholesterol. Now, Dan, let's talk about this fear. What can someone do to navigate the fear from dying of cancer? Because I've had 3 clients in the past year who were so petrified, they literally didn't do anything. They didn't work with a doctor. They didn't work on, you know, on their holistic. So, and I'm like, you waited way too long. It's like, you've got to get into action, but it's the fear that causes people to freeze. So
yeah, it's just, we built a, remember what I said about societal conditioning and that cancer is default a disease? So, and in our society, death is bad, right? Rather than death is actually a healing taking place, right? We don't see the perspective of that. And so a person that is paralyzed by fear, unfortunately, the only thing that they can do is gently navigate that fear is something inside the person's psyche that has to come out somehow. It's actually coming out, and they need a life skill to move through that. I love breath work personally for that moment. I don't think there's anything better and anything on board that a person can do than conscious breath work to start to reduce the hold that fear has on people. And we know that from seeing people that are going to go perform on stage. Take a breath. You got stage fright, take a breath. You got public speaking problems, take a breath. You're going to go ask that girl out on a date. You're nervous, take a breath. You know, it's always about taking a breath. And I think that's where I would personally say is the beginning stage, is be aware of your breathing.
You know, I appreciate that. My 9th book that I'm working on right now is about breathing and breath work, because I agree with you. Sometimes those emotions are so deep and so locked down, we can't even talk about them, or we can't even, you know, even if we can talk about them, we can't release them. But with our breath, we can begin to move the energy. So what about someone who has a loved one who was recently diagnosed with cancer? How can we be of actual support to people we care about who have cancer without, like I said, feeling sorry for them, but being truly helpful?
Yeah, I've experienced this with myself and my wife when we were going through the process, right? My ex-wife. And I also experienced it with my mom when she had a stage 4 breast cancer. And the thing is we have to understand that it's not our cancer. Like if I'm the caregiver, it's not my journey and it's not my cancer. So I cannot fix that person's situation. I cannot change that person's life, but I can make their life better by understanding what do they need. If I can understand what they need and I can help them meet that need, that's love. If I am understanding of what their need is and I can't not meet that need, that's love, being honest. And then finding someone to meet that need is love. Loving that person is freedom from them influencing your emotional traumas, your emotional needs. And the second part is that go and speak to someone neutral. Go into a counselor, a therapist, a healer for your things that are coming up. Don't take your issues out on the person with cancer. Like, don't hide or project your issues onto the cancer patient, because your beliefs are not the same as their beliefs.
Yeah, and a wonderful question whenever we're living with someone, whether they have a disease or not, is what can I do today to love and support you? How can I love and support you today?
Right.
It's a wonderful question. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. Find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so that you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. We've been listening today to Dan Hegerich. Dan has recovered from cancer not just once, but 6 times. You can find out more about his work as a health coach at danhegerich.com. And remember that you can take charge of your health with natural healing. And thanks so much for listening. We will see you next time.